Good morning, this is Force 13 Live with an update at this point on Hurricane Irma and obviously Jose out there to sea as well. But Irma has made landfall in these last few minutes, you could say, on one of the Florida Keys. The National Hurricane Center, with their update statement that came out at 9:10 a.m. Eastern Time, said that Irma had made landfall at Cudjoe Key in the lower Florida Keys, and gusts of 106 miles per hour are being recorded in the area. The storm has winds of 130 miles per hour and a pressure of 929 millibars at their latest update. And Force 13's numbers aren't too much different to that. And you can also see the radar imagery there at the bottom of the screen as well. And we'll also have plenty of other graphics to bring us up to speed on the current situation. The track of Irma is pretty much assured at this point. It's likely to move all the way up the coast of Florida. I expect that even if the storm does weaken, which is likely by the way because wind shear is going to increase, that storm surge will be one of the biggest threats from this storm as it moves up the coast. You can see the storm surge expectation numbers at the bottom of the screen, and I'll just read them out here. Expected storm surge will reach the following heights above ground if the peak surge occurs at the time of high tide: Cape Sable to Captiva 10 to 15 feet, Captiva to Anna Maria Island 6 to 10 feet, Card Sound Bridge through Cape Sable including the Florida Keys 5 to 10 feet, that will be already occurring, Anna Maria Island to Clearwater Beach including Tampa Bay, that's 5 to 8 feet, North Miami Beach to Card Sound Bridge including Biscayne Bay 3 to 5 feet, probably already occurring there as well, South Sante River to Fernandina Beach 4 to 6 feet, Clearwater Beach to Occolocee River 4 to 6 feet, Fernandina Beach to Jupiter Inlet 2 to 4 feet, and north of North Miami Beach to Jupiter Inlet 1 to 2 feet. And still expecting 5 to 10 feet along the northern coast of Cuba right now, but that will be decreasing. You can also see on this imagery here at the bottom the dry air perhaps heading towards the storm or towards the west. So that will be approaching Irma as well. Conditions will begin to side against it very soon. Let's hope it's immediately. But this is the current situation. Right, you can also see Jose there and its expected track likely to do a loop in the Western Atlantic and could still give the Bahamas something to think about there as well. And there's Typhoon or Tropical Storm Talim, which is expected to become a typhoon and impact Taiwan in around 3 or 4 days. That's something else that we'll be watching very soon indeed. Currently just a tropical storm with 45 mile-an-hour winds. To reiterate the warnings that are currently in effect, a storm surge warning is in effect for South Sante River to the Jupiter Inlet, North Miami Beach southward around the Florida Peninsula to the Occolocee River, I did it again, Florida Keys and Tampa Bay. Hurricane warning, Fernandina Beach southward around the Florida Peninsula to Indian Pass, Florida Keys, Lake Okeechobee, Florida Bay, and the Cuban provinces of Matanzas and La Habana. Hurricane watch for north of Fernandina Beach to Edisto Beach. Tropical storm warning for west of Indian Pass to the Okaloosa-Walton County line, and north of Fernandina Beach to South Sante River. Tropical storm watch for Bimini and Grand Bahama. You may also have noticed by now that with Jose there are small chances of hurricane force conditions. Grand Turk 2%, Mayaguana 2%, San Salvador 3%, Great Exuma 1%, and Grand Turk 28% of tropical storm force winds, according to the National Hurricane Center from Hurricane Jose. So that I also found very interesting indeed. Also behind these two systems there is a new area of interest which has a 50% or did have a 50% chance of development. Is it still? It's 60 now. 60% chance of development, likely to remain out to sea. Obviously if it gets named it will be called Lee. In the East Pacific there are also two areas of interest right now. In fact there's three. One has a 10% chance of development in the next 5 days, and 2 of them have a 50% chance of development in the next 5 days. So there's 3 areas of interest in the Eastern Pacific, and I expect, according to one of the models, that it will probably, one of them will probably hit Mexico. So we'll wait and see on that. But that's the latest situation right now, and I'm going to see if I can bring to you a new imagery right now. But we'll get onto that in a moment. I'm just going to go away for a short moment whilst I inform the social platforms on Force 13 that the live coverage is underway, and we will be underway for some time. Stand by for just a moment. So if you have any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air, do send us a message. We will bring to you some imagery very shortly, and I'm sure there'll be lots of comments and questions throughout today, and we'll probably be here for large parts of today on the live stream. The first thing I'm going to show you right now is the latest imagery of Irma making landfall. There it is. And as you can tell, it's somewhere over the lower Keys. Not exactly sure where, but Key West obviously much further west there in the western eye wall, and it's not particularly a very organized storm, but weak, say weak, Category 4, low end Category 4 is its current intensity. But that's how it's looking right now on the latest imagery. That's as of, let's see, 1:19 UTC, which was, what, 20 minutes ago? 25 minutes ago. How it looked a little bit earlier, you can see there 107, and the eye temperature at that latest frame there. Let's see if we can find that out. The eye temperature is around +3 Celsius, so indicative of a Category 4, and the eye wall temperatures are quite high, quite low as well, rather. Do hurricanes weaken more quickly when an eye wall replacement cycle is underway as it is making landfall? Well, they ought to. Not always the case. Irma did have one occasion or two where it was intensifying during its eye wall replacement cycle, but I don't know what the current situation is inside the storm structure right now, but if an eye wall replacement cycle is occurring, it's probably a perpetual one, because it always seems to be having one right now. More questions then. Do you think Jose could be like Jean of 2004? That is an interesting question. It is a possibility. What I would recommend at this point is maybe to look at the model guidance. Is this Jose? I believe so. I don't think it will be exactly like Jean, because most of the models there don't think that it will affect the US East Coast. All of them pretty much keep it out to sea, apart from just one, the UK Met model, which implies that the storm may affect the Bahamas. That wouldn't necessarily lead to a Florida impact, but it might affect some states further north if it was to do that. But that is 5+ days out, and there's still a lot of uncertainty around what it's going to do. But it does appear at this point that it is going to do a bit of a loop. But you can still see the amount of uncertainty with all of those models on Jose. There could still be a lot of wriggle room around what exactly the storm decides to do. So back to it, and let's see if we've got a visible image right now. Well, that's the full disc from earlier today, and not a particularly well defined eye, as you can see on the imagery, but there it is on the infrared. How bad will it be in east central Florida is a question there. Well, your guess is as good as mine. The National Hurricane Center have put the hurricane chances along the east coast right down. Indeed, for West Palm Beach, for instance, they've now put it down to 0% chance of hurricane conditions occurring, which I think is rather bold of them. The western coast obviously is going to get the worst, no doubt. Hurricane conditions all the way up the coast. Something really strange happened at the update last night at 11 p.m. They put the chances down for hurricane status for all places north of Fort Myers, and we thought that was crazy. They've put the percentages back up again. Initially at around 5 p.m. yesterday, the chances for Tampa was at 86%. It went down to 68 at 11 p.m. and this morning, waking up, it's up to 83% for Tampa again. So obviously it would seem that hurricane force conditions will occur in that locality. If you look further north, you can see what's occurring right now. The bands are still coming through, and they've been coming through all night, haven't they? And they've caused quite a few tornadoes and the like. I'm not quite up to speed on what the situation is on that, but I'll get any information to you right now. Let me see what the latest is. There's no tornado warnings in effect right now, you'll be pleased to know. There are tornado watches still. Tornado watches for pretty much the whole area really, and they'll be in effect for some time, I expect. And there's some civil emergency messages at 5:43 a.m. One was issued at the request of the Collier County Emergency Management. With tropical storm force winds moving into the area, county officials urge all people within Collier County to take shelter until the all clear is given. That will be a while. Emergency services will cease responding to calls for service as of 6 a.m. until it's determined to be safe to resume services. So I remember during Matthew when emergency services had ceased as well. They've ceased in Collier County this morning, as you'd expect, to be honest. But if something bad happens and you haven't evacuated, then things aren't going to be looking very good for you. Obviously the extreme wind warning is in effect and has been in effect since 9:21. That isn't actually so long ago, just half an hour ago. Lower Keys in Monroe County is under an extreme wind warning. Extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation. It includes US 1 between mile markers at 0 and 40. So that's for the extreme wind warning. And I think there is a tornado warning in effect, if I'm not mistaken, in the West Palm Beach area. I can't quite tell, but I'm not seeing it on the screen. So we'll see about that. But obviously, tornadoes are to be expected in the whole area, of course. And it really is a mess right now across the whole southeastern part of the US, with all of the warnings that are in effect extending further. Yep, northeastern Palm Beach County under a tornado warning. That's been issued 10 minutes ago. And that will be near Juno Beach and Juno Ridge at around 9:50. That's now. And West Palm Beach, Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens, North County Airport and the Acreage around 9:55. Take cover now in those areas. So that's coming up very, very soon for those areas. Tornado warning. That's the only tornado warning that's currently in effect. So let me see if we can take this area by area right now, just to give you an update. So obviously you've got storm surge warnings all along the western area of Florida, Everglades City, Marathon, Key Largo, including Homestead as well, and Miami, Key West of course, Naples, Fort Myers, Tampa, and also West Palm Beach, I believe, under the warning as well. Lots of flood warnings in effect for southern Florida too. Northwestern Collier County, East Central Hendry County, Northern Broward County, Northwestern Palm Beach County, flood warnings there. It's around these times when the warnings just go completely nuts, and there's loads of warnings issued for absolutely everything. And that is the situation we have right now. Going further north, where the threat may not be as immediate, but is still approaching, the storm surge warning along coastal areas all the way up the coast to the Panhandle area, and along the eastern coast as well, beyond Daytona Beach. Obviously hurricane warnings for all of those areas, including all points inland, hurricane conditions expected. And then let's just talk even further north towards the border with the neighboring states. Hurricane warnings extend inland as far as Albany in Georgia. Also in effect for Valdosta, of course, and for another place that I can't quite make out the text. For Tifton, I believe it is. Not familiar with the geography in the area. And there are some flood warnings in that area as well, near Valdosta in Georgia. And the tropical storm warnings extend so far inland as well, towards the north. I believe even Atlanta is under a tropical storm warning at this moment in time, and that will continue for a while, indeed. And hurricane watches also along the coast too, still in effect in some places, and flood watches, flash flood watches for large parts of Georgia and possibly even further north. I can't quite tell at this moment in time. And tropical storm watches as well, in effect for inland Alabama, Huntsville, under a tropical storm watch, and even extends just about over the border as well, further north. So that's quite remarkable that tropical storm warnings extend so far inland, even into Tennessee, and wind advisories and potential high wind warnings also in effect for North and South Carolina. So that's what we have right now, and even some coastal flood advisories and beach hazard statements for Texas and rip currents as well, because the storm's influence all along the Gulf Coast. If you've got any questions for us, do start your message with Force 13 all in text. And how long should the power be out in Central Florida is a question there. Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, in the Keys, I just want to mention the Keys first. It could be quite a long time that the power will be out there. Central Florida, further west it will take longer. Further east, I shouldn't expect it should take too long if the power's already out in that area. And along the east coast, hopefully things won't be too significant over there. I think there's a special weather statement that's also out right now. Significant weather advisory for 80 to 100 mile an hour wind gusts for northern mainland Monroe and Miami-Dade counties until 10:45, because there is an intense outer band extending through. Let's now actually get to the radar so that we can show you what the deal is with that right now. For some reason not loading for me at this moment, but as soon as I get that for you, we'll take a look at what the radar is showing us. And this should be it. There's the latest on the radar scope. And as you can see, some significant bands moving through. Try and get a close-up on it if we can here. Obviously it takes some time for me to do things here, as I'm alone in the studio. So you'll have to just make do with it for a moment or two, but obviously all the text information is there on the side of the screen as well. We're coming up to 2 PM UTC. There's the latest on the radar. Now, if we get it to animate, that would be nice. Okay, maybe a flash problem. Okay, here it comes. Here's the latest radar loop for southern Florida right now, and you can see what's currently occurring. The storm making landfall on the Florida Keys, just a few, a dozen miles maybe away from Key West. As you can see, Marathon has just about got away with not getting the innermost eye wall, which is what I thought would occur. I did think the storm would move further west than what happened, based on how it was stalling so much near Cuba, but you know, it's the conditions are going to be so bad over in Key West and over those keys, and the storm surge will also be immense and could increase along the western coast of Florida as it moves towards the area. And the Everglades, they're going to have huge amounts of rainfall and strong winds and some heavy weather moving through the Miami area as well, and more to come. Naples as well, starting to feel the real effects of the storm. I don't know where this radar is. This radar must be from Miami, so the western side of the storm looks poor because it's on the far end of the radar. Just going to see if we can if Key West is still with us as well. Yes, that's how it looked during the landfall in the area. Look at that. And there you can see what's occurring on the western side of the storm as well. Its movement would appear to be almost due north. That's not a good sign, by the way. But look at the intensity of that eye wall as the storm has moved towards the north there. In the meantime, this is where we are right now. Obviously the warnings are still in effect for huge amounts of the southeastern part of Florida. And obviously moving away from Cuba. Cuba should have seen most of the effects of the storm by this point. Let's go further north and see if we can get some more radars. This is the Tampa Bay area that's loading now. And you can see significant bands moving through there. Sarasota and to Tampa. And you can see Melbourne on the right hand side as well. Some significant thunderstorms moving through there too. But the real bands just creeping up on the southern part of the image there towards Fort Myers. Further north, along the Bend area, this is what it looks like right now. Staying dry, Tallahassee and further west, but the rainfall is about to begin, it would appear. More bands moving through the Jacksonville area in Georgia. And as you can see, conditions are looking not too bad over there, awaiting the first rains, which will no doubt arrive. And the storm, of course, is expected to sweep through Georgia and Alabama. And you look at the graphic there, still as a tropical storm over Alabama and into Tennessee as a post-tropical or remnant low. And that's where we are at present. The National Hurricane Center will update in an hour with their full update, but their update statement should be out by now, so let's go and get it. The latest, Irma's eye beginning to move away from the lower Florida Keys. A 93-mile-an-hour gust was recently measured at Carey's Fort Reef Light near Key Largo, a National Ocean Service station in Key West, just reported a sustained wind of 67 miles an hour and a gust to 89. The storm remains at 130 miles an hour with a pressure of 929 millibars. So that's about it from here with the latest live update on the storms. There'll be more updates throughout the day on the channel, and the next one on Irma coming up very soon indeed. And there will also be updates on Jose and Talim in due course on the channel. Stay up to date on our social platforms. Search Force13 in text on Facebook and Twitter. You can also add Fool13 on Skype and add extension 9094 on Discord for tropical weather chat at any time. The updates will be thick and fast throughout today, but at the moment we don't have particular resources to run live streaming for the rest of today, but we will have regular updates throughout. But that's all from us here, and we'll have some more updates throughout today. Stay tuned, stay safe out there on the Florida coast, because things are going to get a lot worse for the western coast.